In this video, I'm going to explain to you why BMW's single-cylinder and twin-cylinder engines sound so unpleasant. Let's take this BMW F850 as an example. First, we need to understand its internal structure. On BMW's single and twin-cylinder engines, the center point of the crankshaft is right here. The crankshaft rotates in a clockwise direction. However, this engine has a unique characteristic. Its camshafts are not driven directly by the crankshaft. Instead, the crankshaft drives this idler gear, and then this idler gear drives the timing chain. Therefore, the camshafts actually rotate in reverse. In most other engine models, the camshafts and crankshaft rotate in the same direction. As for BMW's single-cylinder engines, because of this design, take the BMW G310 for example. Its exhaust port is located here. Where a normal car has an intake, it has an exhaust. And where the exhaust usually is, that is its intake port. That's the BMW single-cylinder. But on BMW twin-cylinders, the intake and exhaust positions remain unchanged. This is what puzzles many people. Logically, if it rotates in reverse, it should be like the BMW 310, where the intake becomes the exhaust, and the exhaust becomes the intake. So how did BMW solve this for the twin-cylinder? We need to look at the camshaft angles. Currently, cylinder 1 is at top dead center, TDC. Normal cars have an inverted V, outward, low profile. But look at this BMW engine. It's at standard V, inward, shape. Let me demonstrate with my fingers. Normally, the cam angles look like this. Intake like this. Exhaust like this, right? But look at the BMW twin-cylinder. This camshaft is a mirror image. This might be hard to visualize. You all know about V-twin engines, right? For example, Yamaha, the Virago models. If you swap the front and rear cylinder camshafts, after swapping, you'll find that the exhaust becomes the intake. The intake port becomes the exhaust port, and the exhaust becomes the intake. BMW uses this principle to maintain the conventional intake and exhaust directions. Some colleagues might wonder, if I rotate the crankshaft one more turn, what will the camshaft angle be? Let me continue the demonstration. After all, for every 2 crankshaft rotations, the camshaft rotates once. Now, look at the camshaft angle at this point. Isn't it exactly the mirror effect of a standard camshaft? Now it makes sense. Double negatives make a positive. It means the intake and exhaust ports are preserved. So why is it so noisy? For this dual overhead cam, DOHC, structure, many of you in the trade know this. When the camshaft rotates normally, clockwise, which is counterclockwise for the chain, the timing chain stays constantly taut. But when it rotates in reverse, the timing chain becomes loose and tight intermittently. As it happens, these BMW camshafts rotate in reverse under normal operation. This causes the timing chain to cycle between loose and tight. Pay attention to the state of the timing chain here. Right now, it's at normal tension. Now I'll start turning the crankshaft. Watch the changes in the chain's tension carefully. Turning to this point. It is extremely tight. I can hardly press it down. Even with more force, it barely moves. It's tighter than what the tensioner provides. I'll keep turning. Watch closely now. Observe very carefully. You'll see a jumping motion. Look at the timing chain above the exhaust cam. Right here. See how the chain is climbing up? At this moment, look at the chain. Isn't it very loose? The tensioner is in its normal tensioning state. But this section is not controlled by the tensioner. This is exactly why. A small chain guide rail is placed horizontally here. The reason for this guide is to prevent the chain from skipping teeth. And then, this climbing action transfers over to the intake camshaft. Now you can see it. The chain is climbing up the sprocket. Then the chain goes loose again. Turn it a bit more, and it tightens up. So, the timing chain of this engine is constantly toggling between loose and tight at this spot. This is where the small guide rail plays a crucial role. It prevents tooth skipping and climbing. So why does this happen? It's because during the camshaft's rotation, once it passes the peak of the cam lobe, the valve spring pushes back against the cam between the two camshafts. This creates a counterforce. The direction of this force is directed inward between the two camshafts. So when the cam reaches this point, it causes the timing chain between the cams to go slack. Therefore, the source of noise in this BMW engine is the sound of the timing chain snapping tight and loose. Europeans call it mechanical sound. They like this kind of noise, but we usually don't like it much. Okay, let me turn it faster now. You can feel it for yourselves. Watch the jumping of the timing chain. Alright, now you see it clearly, right? In other engines where camshafts rotate forward, the pulling force of the chain and the valve spring force, after passing the lobe's peak, are essentially in the same direction. So other engines don't do this. Only BMW does. It's a deliberate design. Like I said, Europeans call this noise mechanical sound. They love it. After installing this small guide rail, look. It can only prevent it from skipping teeth. The slack is still there. The tendency to climb is still there. Look at this part here. So if this upper small guide rail breaks, the timing will skip. There was an influencer who fell into this trap. That's why you all kept tagging me. Now you see how it got damaged, right? Exactly like that. Would you say it's noisy?